it's expired cubing, and this is going to be a critique on Dominic Redisi's 4.09 Pyraminx average. So let's get into it with the first scramble. So for this solve, I bet you were jumping with joy when you saw this, and that yellow is super easy. As you can see, it's just a really easy yellow layer, and that's exactly what you did. So you picked it up, you did the U-tip, and then you did R prime, L prime, R, U prime, R, which is the right way to do it if you're doing the layer. You rotated, and then you just did your last layer and your last tip. So the solve was obviously pretty good, as it was your best time in the average, but there are a couple things of note. First is tips. You only did the U-tip. I think you should have done UB tip, just to save yourself the headache of having to do the U-tip on your last move or after your last move. And that can be pretty easily done by doing it with your middle finger. And I know you know how to do this because you do it multiple times later in the average, but you just didn't for this one. And I recommend not leaving the U-tip for last, because if you have something like a body AUF and a tip AUF, it's just a lot of headache and a lot of thinking that you can just save by doing all the tips at the beginning. The next thing is that when you picked up the pyra, all you did was picked it up, did the tip, and then immediately regripped. I don't know why you did this. If you wanted to do that, you should have picked it up more with your left hand and then came in, slid under with your right hand, and then got into it. And that probably could have saved you a little bit of time. Again, it is like you pick it up more with your left hand and you come under with your right hand. And then you go into it. The final thing I have to say about this solve was that you missed the opportunity to do a wide move that could save a rotation, which is kind of minor, but it still is a thing that I think you could have done. So from this angle, the way you did the layer leaves it in the front, and that's not good. I think what you should have done was when you were here, instead of doing an R move, you should have done a wide L move. And doing that puts the top in the top where you can actually start doing moves, and it would have just been a lot better. So yeah, that was the first solve. For the second solve, you had a good solution up until L4E, and then it kind of fell apart. So let's just look at what you did. What you did at first was pick up the cube and do the LB tips. You left this one unsolved, and then you did R and then a B pulling towards you with your index finger, which is good. You sort of rotated and did the final B move of the V, which is also good. And then after this, you panicked. You went up to do the U-tip with your right hand, except it doesn't go that way. So you bring it back down and then went up with your left hand to finally do it. You still didn't really know what to do with the body, so you just did an insert and you got a 2-flip, and then you just executed the 2-flip. What you should have done is a couple things. Firstly, do all tips at the beginning, because leaving this tip unsolved wasted you a lot of time, and doing it at the beginning is definitely net better. The next thing is doing it from this angle. And doing it from this angle saves a rotation, and the finger tricks are very similar. And it goes like that. I would have done tips like that from this angle. And then you do U, R, and then this B prime. Instead of pulling towards you, you're pushing away. And that is a very useful finger trick for doing a lot of RB stuff. And it's just very useful in general, so you should learn that finger trick if you don't already know it. Next is to just learn L4E. Doing an insert into a 2-flip is not great, and you should just do L4E. So yeah, that was the second solve. Let's take the third one now. So for the third scramble, you did the green V, and what you did was the UBR tips at the beginning, saving this one for whenever. You did RLR to solve this as a bar and then solve this edge relative to this center. You fumbled around and ended up in this orientation, and what you did was you just twisted the corner by doing R prime LR. You fumbled some more, ended up doing this tip, and then you rotated and got lucky with an L3E. So your solution was not amazing, but neither is the scramble, so I don't fault you for not finding anything great. I do, however, have one note about it, and I think you should have done it from, instead of this angle, you should have done it from this angle. And from this angle, I would do all the tips at the beginning, something like this, or I do a pinky move, which is something I just started doing in school. Anyways, you could have done it by doing L, U, L, R prime, U, R. And then instead of doing 2 rotations, you only have to do 1, and you still get the same good L3E. A better alternative to this would have been the blue V, and that can be done, and it also makes the tips easier. That can be done by doing L, R prime, U prime, B prime, L3E. From a different angle, it is like this, and it still gives you an L3E, and I think that is the best solution for the scramble, and just giving you that as a resource. So yeah. For solve 4, you did the green V, and you did it from this angle, and you started off doing the U and R tips. You did a B prime pushing with your middle finger, which is really great to see that you're doing advanced finger tricks. It doesn't look the greatest, but if you would practice more, it would get more fluid. Anyways, continuing with the solve, you did an L, R, and then brung this B back up with your index finger, which again is really good. You rotated, you did an L, R prime to finish off your V, you did the final tip, and then you rotated again to have L4E, and then you went to go insert this edge to have L3E, but instead of going directly into it from there, you took it out again and then put it back in and then did your L3E. So this solution is actually pretty decent for someone at your level. I would have done almost the same thing. But for your solution, I recommend you should have done it from this angle instead of this one, because from this angle, there's only 1 B move instead of 2, and the tips are just a lot easier. So you should do tips, and then do an R prime, L, U, R, L, B prime, and it gives you the same L4E. But a quirky thing about Pyraminx is, or a quirky thing about cubing in general, is you can rearrange some of the moves to get a drastically different L4E. So I would do the same solution, except I would do the L first, and then the R prime U R, and then finishing off the L B prime again, you get a hedge. And that is really cool, and it's just something that you should start thinking about if you learn L4E and start getting into more advanced solving. Your final solve was probably, in my opinion, your best solve of the average, even though it wasn't your best time. What you did was actually, you mis-scrambled and accidentally did an extra tip inspection. But what you did was you started from here, you did all 3 of your tips like you should in every solve. Then you did in R prime, L prime, you sort of rotated and did this R, and then when you tried to do this L, you kind of messed it up and like had to go fix a tip. And then for you, your last barges was good. You immediately inserted the yellow edge and went into the L3E and then instantly did the AUF. So that was all really good, except you could just do L4E, and other than that, your solve was perfectly fine. I would have done something a little differently because I would have wanted to do it rotationless like I do all of my solves, and that would mean instead of doing this move down, I would have moved it up so I can do the B move. So I would do the tips, I would do like that, and then the L, and then I would have got a 2 flip, but it's one of the good ones, so that solve would have been pretty good. So yeah, those were your 5 solves. The major things you need to work on are doing all your tips at the beginning, because that did cause you a lot of extra wasted time, and then choosing which angle you're going to do the V from based on not the way you inspected, but the way that you should do it. Ideally, having the least amount of rotations you can, or even having no rotations and solving the V where your slot is just in the front. Other than that, just learn L4E. Just do it. If you learned L4E, you could probably be sub 4 easy. Your Vs are pretty decent. These scrambles were easy, but you did have good Vs. And other than that, I think if you really wanted to, you could be pretty good at Pyraminx. So yeah, I'm expired cubing, and no, I'm not.
Okay, that was actually kind of good.